Hey guys, Happy New Year. I hope that you guys had a really amazing 16 days off.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Very quiet for me. How about you, Taylor?
Yeah, it was great. A lot of cycling and running and dog time and all of that. So it was very refreshing, actually.
Yeah, mine was I got to unplug and not have any Zooms, and it was really great to not have any headaches for 16 days. I thought I'd start the video today by reading a quote that I've been reading to some of the older grades for our circle. It's called A Toast to the Old You. If you feel inspired to use the new year to help you reset or change habits, great. And yet, the old you has survived every terrible day, every hard thing, every awful circumstance, and every heartbreak you've ever felt. The old you is a fighter, and that's worth celebrating.
I love that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I really like that. That's
thanks.
and that's perfect for what we were going to talk about today. The idea of, I don't know, resolutions of making small steps towards, your goals, what you want to do this year.
Setting goals for 2021,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
big versus small. It was interesting. I was talking to a student this week, and they said that they had actually made up a list of goals, and I think they had like 9 goals. I said, "Wow, that's a lot."
Wow.
And what they said though was that they had these big goals, but then they broke it down into like monthly goals. So
Oh,
just like
nice.
a small step, and they said that they would, at the end of the month, they were going to sit down and go over them, and then like write the next step for the next month and do that like once a month. And I thought that was brilliant.
Oh, that's perfect. How
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. What a
Yeah,
mature kiddo.
Oh, pretty good for a 12-year-old, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
it's really great. And it always reminds me, something I always say to kids and to parents and to even myself and my family is we don't ever start out at step 10. You got to take the first step first.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, at least for me, if I have a goal and it's far out and it's big, it's so much easier to not do it because it seems so big. But when you start to break things down into really small chunks, you're like, oh, okay, this one little small step is totally doable. I can do this today. And then it's like, okay, well, I did that today. I can do this tomorrow. And then if you have a way to plan it out, like, if your goal is to like ride your bike more, first step, get a bike, make sure it's got air in the tires, and you break it down to those small steps, then in a month, you're riding your bike more.
Mm-hmm.
But for some people, the idea of like, oh, I've got to ride my bike more, I've got to do this, it's too much.
Well,
um
don't they
Yeah.
say like for all the New Year's resolutions, like 80% of them are dropped by mid-February?
I think so.
And it could be because people are trying to do too much at once,
Mhm.
right? Like you
Yeah.
said, they're going for that big goal instead of just today I'm going to focus on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use a very similar analogy. I do it with like push-ups. If I were to ask you guys, just maybe you, Taylor, you could probably do this. If I said to do 100 push-ups, I mean, perhaps you might be able to. I know I could not, and I'm guessing that Leith probably couldn't. If I asked you each to do one, you could do one. And then if I
Yeah.
asked you tomorrow to do two, and then you build up. And that's the same thing with having any of our goals for the kids and students in the school is we had 16 days off and now we're started back up again, and just taking the little things each day, slow it down. Don't look at 138 days from now. Look at today and then tomorrow, what you can do
Yeah.
to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny that you use that as an example. I literally met with a kiddo yesterday, and we both have to see how many push-ups we can do at once. And then we're going to see how many push-ups we can work our way up to. So it's funny that, yeah, push-ups are it's a very concrete example of this is where you're at. And if
Mm-hmm.
you work towards something, you can see the improvement.
Mm-hmm. But
Um,
okay, here's a question. What do you do though if you wind up having to skip a couple days? How do you handle that if you look at yourself and you say, "Oh, I didn't even do that much the last 2 days"?
mhm.
What I would do is I would go back to the number of sit-ups that I did the day before.
Yeah.
You don't give up. It's not like you don't have to throw in the towel. You just start from where you left off.
Yeah.
And if you have to go backwards a couple steps, that's okay too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think of some of the kids, especially the older kids, who are given these huge, like a big report they have to do. You don't think of writing the last chapter. You think of coming up with a title for it. So just doing a little things at a time and checking the list off, making a list of what you have to do, just crossing one thing off at a time. That's an easy solution.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think, I was thinking about this. I was writing one day and I was thinking about, when we make a goal, we're usually looking at ourselves in the past with some type of judgment. I should be better at this. I should be doing more of this, and so we have this sort of like judgment of where we were in the past, but then we set this goal that is sometimes and often an unrealistic expectation, and then it leaves you kind of in this really difficult spot, because if you go back to where you were, you're judging yourself, but then you've got this unrealistic expectation. And so I think the balance is trying to do what you can to remain in those small steps. Like, hey, today I did this. Tomorrow, okay, maybe I don't do it tomorrow. That's okay. The next day, I'll do it again. And if you miss a couple days, this is where I'm at right now. This is what I have to do to get back on track.
I think that's really great, because that approach really helps the negative talk that we all get in our head of like, oh, I failed, or I didn't do this, or I'm not good enough. Where if you can just stay in that moment, that's when you can have that positive self-talk of like, this is where I'm at and I'm really okay with that. Just doing your personal best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't, I know for a lot of people, it's easier if you do have a goal, right? I want to be able to ride 10 miles, by the end of whatever, or run this or do that. But sometimes having the goal is just the means. Well, it's the ends to the means.
Yeah.
So it's just to get you in the habit of doing something that makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that goal is there because it's something you want to work towards. But I think sometimes it's okay to permit yourself to do things, even if you're not great at it, even if you don't reach that goal. You just learn to enjoy the process of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as people, we're really good at overcomplicating things. And sometimes with goals, it's better to just keep it simple. I didn't reach my thing today. Well, how come I didn't reach it? Because I was really busy. Okay. Maybe tomorrow, do what I can to not be as busy. Try and just keep things as simple, and then learn from those days where you don't do what you need to do, so that way you're like, okay. Well.
Yeah. I hear yourself saying, just give yourself a break when you need to, and being okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's very hard for all of us sometimes. But how can, if you're a parent though, and you have a child who gives up easily on things because they think they have to be able to get there right away, how can a parent help their child learn that it's more of the process and the doing rather than that end goal? That's actually the important part. What can a parent say, do you think?
Well, I think
just acknowledging them trying and just being in the moment of like, I really see that you're trying your best, and that's amazing. That's great for me.
Acknowledging the effort.
Yep. And I think sometimes if your goal is, a very concrete numbers driven thing, make another goal of, I want to enjoy getting there. If your goal is to ride your bike more, or if your goal is to like do most of your homework or do more of your homework, intertwine something that is a goal within the process. I want to be able to enjoy riding my bike after work, or I want to be able to learn to not feel so anxious about having homework. Having some type of process driven goal, I think, is really important. I know when I would coach, a lot of times we would focus on those type of goals just to get people in the habit of doing whatever they're doing, because numbers change and fluctuate. And if your goal is a certain weight, or your goal is a certain type of whatever it is, things can change, and as we've seen the last year, other things can factor into us reaching our goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really love that. I love that you put that adjective in there to describe, because otherwise you're just people. I mean, how many moments are we missing by not really enjoying whatever we're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's not like I have to all of a sudden love doing statistics or something, but at least trying to have a better feeling while I'm learning something that could be challenging for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And enjoyment doesn't necessarily have to be like, doing homework is never going to be the same as like eating ice cream. But if you can get to a point where you're like comfortable doing it and it's not as bad as it was before,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a huge win,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of like being optimistic about it, finding the good in whatever you're doing.
Right. Right.
I'm sorry, I have the feeling right here, so
Yeah.
I have like 13 of them. But yeah, I really just love how that sounds. It's just finding the best in that particular moment, even when there's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to look a little bit harder or look a little bit differently, but it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I really, for me, over the last couple weeks, I don't have a hard time running or riding, but having a friend or having some type of like external accountability, having a buddy like, hey man, no, let's go ride today. Let's do this road. Whereas I wouldn't normally have done that on my own. If you've got that person there, they're just that little bit of extra like oomph that you need to like find that motivation, where motivation is scarce right now because we're stressed and anxious, but when you've got that friend, it's like, oh, okay, that's the espresso shot that I needed to do whatever I need to do.
It's a little bit easier. You have a reason to go do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
All right. So what's one goal you guys have for yourselves before we say goodbye? Have you guys made any resolutions?
I'm not a huge resolution person, but I think one of my goals has been, I think it started before New Year's, but I'm going to stick with it, is being able to be more in the moment focused, and just kind of mellow, which I'm already mellow, but let my mind mellow, and get more sleep. Sleep is always a thing for me.
Yeah, mine is not necessarily, I'm not really big into making a New Year's resolution each year. So it's a continued process. So mine is to continue to be kind to myself, and that is really embracing self-care.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that.
How about you?
Me? Oh, actually mine's pretty concrete. It's to read more. I want to get back in the habit of reading more, because I love to read books, but and I just think it just speaks to where we are in the world right now. A lot of times I have a hard time just kind of diving in and getting lost in a book. And I have to, like, being mindful, slow my mind down and really just get into the story and do that. And once I do that, I can really enjoy it. But that's the piece that I'm having a hard time getting back in the habit of. So I'm going to really work on that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that, because I've had a reader's block since last spring. So, and I too enjoy reading, but I find myself finding watching repeated comedies instead. So
Yeah, the mind's gone somewhere else for a while, but I want to get back into books.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, wishing you guys all a great start to your 2021 year.
You too. You too. Thanks for that. Thanks again for the quote, Krista. I liked it.
That was great.
Thanks.
That's perfect.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.